Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin.
In this show, we're going to look back on legal aspects in property.
Pasha, how to access your credit report and how to get it right.
But first,
We're going to have Rex and Morella from Bond Conveyancing. They're going to discuss with us the pros and cons of going into a building contract and, of course, what you should know when signing a contract. I'm here with Morella and Rex here from Bond Conveyancing. Thank you for joining us on the New Property Show. I have found in the past that some developers I've felt have pushed land out intentionally to exit out of an existing contract that might be $300,000 where they thought the land value might be $400,000. They push clients out. Any advice on that?
Some developers used to to get finance and you get a number of pre-settlements or pre-sales done.
pre-sales.
So they get the pre-sales done for a low price and they'll put a low sunset clause, and in the old days either the vendor or the purchaser, the developer or the purchaser can get out of contract if you went to the sunset date and you didn't. The state government of Victoria changed the laws on that and they can't do it anymore.
Perfect. We're going to change lanes now. You now have a building contract in front of you. It's either a HIA or a master builder's contract. What are some of the things that people should watch out for when reading through a contract? And last but not least, progress payments, any other terminologies that they should really just have a skim over. And of course, they're going to get professional advice from you guys. But what are some of the things that you will find in those contracts that seem to come up a lot?
The most important, I think, is the specifications. What are they actually getting? The contract itself, the HIA or the master builders, are pretty standard. They're the same, but they're always builder favourable as well. But the major part is the schedule pages and what's included, because anything that's not included becomes a variation and you pay extra. So you may think that you're getting a tiled floor, you may not be getting it. Or you may think you can choose the tile, but you don't get to choose it. And the moment you go to change what you wanted or what you thought is right, you're paying extra and big variations. So the specifications is really important. The second part I would say is liquidated damages. If the builder goes overboard, like as in there's a time frame in the contract, so make sure
260 days, for example.
260 days, so they've got to finish it within 260 days. Then there's normally a weekly payment of liquidated damages if the builder agrees that if I go over 260 days, I'll pay you, it's normally $100 or maybe $200.
I've seen some 250s in there. They've reduced those to 100 now. All right. And what about yourself, Morella? What would you actually say? What carries more weight, the drawings or what's written?
What do you mean the drawings?
So in a builder's contract, what may happen sometimes is the drawings may show a facade and a different variation from what's written. So there might be, for example, a St. Mary's facade that's drawn, and in the written form, it may be a Lucy facade. There's sometimes been debates there because one costs more than the other. What really carries the weight? What's written or what's drawn?
What's in the contract?
What's written in the contract.
That's a great answer.
What's in the contract?
And I can't stress enough
written.
to all my clients, always just whatever you've discussed at the time of negotiations, just make sure everything is in writing. All representations have to be in the contract. If they're not, then we can't enforce that at settlement. They've got to take further legal action. Just to give you an example, I've had clients in the past where they've bought a property thinking they get air conditioning and central heating, and then it wasn't in the contract, it was in the marketing material by the agent. So it just takes so much and it's so costly for the purchaser after settlement to have to bring up legal action against the builder or the developer. It makes a big difference for a person who's going to live in the property in winter to have central heating or not.
It does.
That is so important. So all the conditions and the terms of the contract, it's really what carries the weight.
Beautiful. I have one last question for you. Solicitor versus conveyancer, who wins and why?
That's a debate because I'm a licensed conveyancer.
Rex
is a solicitor.
And look, Bond Conveyancing is a law firm as well. I am biased, but I always say lawyers. Go for law firm.
One can get you in, one can also get you out.
Pretty much, because if something goes wrong, a conveyancing firm can't. I know it's called Bond Conveyancing, but it's a law firm. So if something goes wrong, we have litigation lawyers that'll get you out of it and can fight for you. If you go to just a conveyancing practice, they can't do it. They're going to then give it to a law firm who's going to then read the file, catch up on it, and it's going to cost you a lot more.
Morella, and your thoughts?
I have to agree with Rex. Look, I love being a conveyancer, but I guess the benefit of a law firm is that a conveyancer can actually get direct access to support. Let's say if we need to draft a special condition, if we question a condition that's been drafted when we're acting for a purchaser, we've got the lawyers there, we've got the law firm, we've got all the resources to ask questions immediately there on the spot. Whereas as a conveyancer, if I was trading just as a conveyancer, I would have to say to my clients, look, this is really outside my scope. I cannot give you any legal advice, so you'll have to go to a lawyer. A lawyer will have to, get a briefing on the case, and they charge an hourly rate, so it could be more costly at the end of the day.
Tasha, welcome to the New Property Show.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Today we're going to talk about credit reports. First of all, where do you start? How do you access a credit report and what do you guys do?
So to access a credit report, there are something called credit bureaus. So there are 3 credit bureaus in Australia, being Equifax, Illion and Experian. You can access your credit report from one of the 3 websites listed on screen right now, but you could also contact us directly and we can obtain your credit report for you.
And what do you think a credit report, what's the use of a credit report? What does it actually help you ascertain?
Interesting question. So I guess the short of it is a credit report is a good indicator about your financial health, similar to like a blood report would be from a doctor. So it gives someone who wants to lend you money or to assess if you're credit worthy, to determine if you are a good repayer or you've had good history, to make a determination on what type of products would be available for you from a finance point of view.
What are you typically seeing on them? Is it utilities? Is it loans? What's actually picked up and what are the current trends?
So you have a variety of items listed. So for example, your credit card, personal loans, home loans, they'll be listed in including how you're making your repayments, if on time or not, for example. So that's called your repayment history information. Then you have, for example, utility providers and telcos. So that information on your mobile phone plan would be also there recorded as well. So utilities being for gas and electricity. And then you have your personal information as well. So you want to make sure that everything is correct and accurate as much as possible.
Including change of address and that as well? Does that pop up?
Absolutely, yeah. So what happens a lot of the time is the address of the person doesn't match the person where they are, and then that leads to other potential fraudulent or identity issues when the person wants to come and seek finance.
What are some of the most common things that seem to pop up on a credit report? And then really how do you go about repairing them?
Okay, so what we see right now with regarding the trends, obviously with the cost of living going up, repayment history information is being impacted. So people are prioritizing naturally their home loans over like their credit cards or personal loans. But what they're not realizing is when they're not making their repayments on time, it's having a significant impact on their credit worthiness and impacting their credit score overall. And the algorithm will then deem this person to be not credit worthy. So when they come to get finance, whether it's for personal loan, car loan or whatnot, that's when it impacts them. So what we do as a practice, so being the principal of Australia's largest legal practice that specialises in credit repair, we do exactly that. So we determine whether or not adverse entries like defaults, judgments, late repayment history, or if they've got too many inquiries that they've done online, if these things can be removed to rectify the client's credit report so they're in a position to get the best loan possible via their finance representative.
So I've heard the numbers on a credit report. Love to sort of really tackle them, but 0 to 500, 500 to 600, 600 to 800. Let's start with 0 to 500. So what does that sort of client look like?
So 0 to 500 is in the category of what's deemed by the credit bureaus as a poor credit score. So maybe walking through some examples with you. So we get clients that, for example, their credit score is low because of their repayment history information being impacted. Then we analyse to see if that can be improved, removing the repayment history information or correcting it. And then the score jumps up as a byproduct. Between that 500 to 600 category, that's better, but it's still probably not going to get you into that excellent category to be eligible for the best, lowest interest rates possible out there when seeking finance. So as an example, sometimes we get clients that are trying to get car loans and their credit score is just below where it needs to be. So it's good, but it's not excellent. So maybe they've had too many inquiries. So they've gone shopping online with pay their lenders, which is a bit of a no-no when it comes to the credit bureaus. So we look at if those items can be removed by analysing with the client, and the credit score goes up, then the client would be then eligible to get that car loan that they wanted to. And then you've got your ideal category, so excellent, anything probably above 700 and above, so it goes up to a scale of 0 to 1200. That's where you want to be to be able to seek the best financial products available and to go for the best interest rates to stay away from non-conforming lenders, if you will.
Okay, I didn't realise the number went all the way to 1200. What's a client look like that's over 1,000? You mean that's pretty blessed. How do you get a score like that?
So there's a few different things that you can do with risk. So you can check your credit reports regularly with alerts to make sure that things haven't been impacted, and that also will help you to avoid things that happen from a fraudulent point of view by being on top of it or keeping your finger on the pulse, if you will. The other things you can do is, for example, making sure that you make repayments on your cards and home loans maybe 2 days before the due date. Now, what we found out is that actually has an impact with the algorithm for whatever reason. So there are a couple of things, but we have some more tips that we'll be able to share with you. Don't do too many credit inquiries in a short span of time. Modify your spending habits. Set repayments on accounts to occur a few days ahead of the due date. Paying a debt will not remove the default or judgment from your credit report. It will simply update it to paid and still remain on your report for between 5 to 7 years. So be sure to contact us before you pay it. Don't ignore the debts because defaults can be relisted. Identity fraud. So make sure you keep your credit reports and check on it regularly to avoid any identity issues.
What about a client that has not obtained a loan before? They're 25 years of age.
Sure.
They've been taught the philosophy of cash, cash, cash. They live with mum and dad. They actually don't have a loan. Would you suggest they actually should start building some sort of credit history? Should they go and take a small personal loan out or credit card? Because sometimes no such thing as always the perfect client.
Sure.
But they go to apply for a loan and they haven't really ever had anything before. So what would you suggest in that scenario?
Firstly, I'd be saying before you do anything, speak to your finance representative. They know best to be able to indicate for you, I guess from a credit reporting point of view, where you're positioned. If your credit report is poor or low because you have adverse entries on there like defaults and judgments because in a previous lifetime something's happened, then that's when we can also get involved to help rectify those items to make your credit score go up. So I think it's important to categorize that there's a difference between your credit score and credit worthiness. They are interrelated, but you've got, for example, we've got clients that will come with an excellent credit score of 800, but because they've got a negative listing or an adverse entry on their credit report, that then doesn't fit a good lender's policy. So it's important to rectify those issues before you apply for finance.
Last question. If somebody's got, let's say they had a few outstanding matters, and the only real way forward for them was to consolidate debt, would you recommend that practice and how would you go about that? So for example, before they can move on to purchasing their home, for example, they've got a few matters of 2,000, 4,000, 1,000. Would you recommend consolidating, cleaning all that bad debt back up and then moving forward?
Again, I would be saying speak to the finance representative to make sure what your strategy is so it doesn't impact your borrowing capacity, because right now, obviously with the higher interest rate, tighter lending policies, people can't borrow as much as they could before COVID. So long story, I think it's wise to be able to minimize your debt as much as possible, but as important, if not more, make sure that those debts don't accumulate and into a spiral with bad spending habits to then make you, I guess, become defaulted.
So Pasha, I'd like to know if you've got bad credit, what you should do next and why you guys?
So first thing is don't apply for any more types of finance. First, we need to stem the bleeding, if you will. So first thing is to get in contact. If you've got a copy of the credit report, feel free to share it with us. If not, we can order it. The one that we order doesn't impact your credit score at all. It's a file access, so then we'll run a upfront analysis with you, and I guess that points into one reason why us, to answer your question. So the client gets to speak to a solicitor trained in credit repair and credit law to make sure there is grounds that we're able to assist. So, we'll speak to you on the phone, find out because each person's case is different. And it doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be a huge life event. It could be the smallest reason. So 99% of people pay their bills on time. There's always a reason why we don't. And if we can look at that and then we can be able to open that up and tell you upfront whether or not we can assist. So if we can, fantastic, we can talk about the process moving forward. But if we can't, then we'll try to steer you in the right way about what you can do for now. Beautiful. Great tips. Look forward to having you back on the show, and thank you for joining us today on the New Property Show. Thank you very much. And for all your interested viewers out there, they can contact us via the information on screen, or they can reach out and call us. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about current housing crisis today and your thoughts on it and views. Who wants to kick us off?
I reckon Ian would be the man.
Yeah, I'll start. Housing crisis. We've got ridiculous rents. We got low vacancy rates, and there's only one way rents are going to go from that. So from the first quarter of when COVID hit through till today, we've had an increase in some areas of 75% for rental properties pricing. And at the same token, this seesaw effect that happens in property, you've got property prices going up and rents usually stagnate until the point where renters say, well, actually, I can't afford to buy, so they keep renting, and then the rentals go up, and then they can afford to buy because it's about the same price. That's not happening at the moment. We've got both property prices and rentals going up at the same time, and the crisis needs to stop somehow.
You normally don't see that. You normally basically would see in terms of people are holding off buying, but at the moment even getting into the market's a bit tough. And obviously, I know we focus a little bit on this show about the New Property Show, but happy to open it up. What's the price, medium and range that you're seeing across the range? Are you seeing in terms of you're only seeing more depreciation reports coming out, or people are tightening up on their spending, or what's happening?
Yeah, we've been unaffected so far, yeah. But I know personally myself in terms of the yields you're getting, and obviously everybody's been affected with interest rates going up. It's getting tighter and tighter. It's getting harder and harder. So the market is going to lose some of those rental properties in the market, whether the bank repossesses them or whatever. So we have got to become a bit more creative in terms of our housing policies. And I love what you were saying before, Ian, about the co-living and these policies that has got to be brought in by government. For me, we opened up a couple of Airbnbs was one of our solution, and it was fantastic when COVID was around. Straight after COVID, and you couldn't travel overseas, and we're pretty full most of the time. And it's got tighter and tighter now. People have started going overseas, so that market's pretty much dried up a lot on the Sunshine Coast. So we have got to find new ways, be a bit more creative around it. Unless you can get fantastic finance deals, which Martin I'm sure could assist with, you've got to become a bit more creative. Make sure you can claim every deduction you can, including depreciation, and work with your accountant to claim everything back you're due to. So you pay as little tax as possible this year, for the coming future.
Would you say, Martin, obviously it's not only just housing that's affected, it's businesses, because the two really go hand in hand. As much as you want to individually run a household, the performance of the household is typically leaning in on the business. What are you seeing happening in the business sector there?
Well, in the business sector now, we're seeing a lot of collapses in the construction industry. And change is a good thing. I like to think counter-cyclically. So, the situation is that there's a lot of downward talk in the economy, but we're here talking about the crisis. And the crisis is a shortage, and I'm a bit of a student of economics, and there's a thing called supply and demand that drives those things. So simply we're seeing that there is some change and issues in the construction industry because things need to change, but long-term investment in property has got to be great. We've got a situation where high interest rates are frightening people away, but really the long-term, particularly with immigration coming back into the country, the shortages are only going to increase. So the wise investor now is perhaps looking at doing something in an environment where everyone's talking against it, or many economic pundits are, and taking advantage of the circumstances that are here right now.
I think too, with increased pricing going up and increased rent, it also could cause quite an explosion. But on the opposite side of that, and you may see this too, Ian, but if people aren't meeting their rental repayments, their mortgage repayments, there could be a position, and I think there is a solution to this, but there could be a position where people are kicked out of their houses. But I'm suggesting to people, if you've got rooms to rent, just right now become a landlord. Like, it's just weather the storm. Is that a solution too that you put forward to the everyday mum and dads?
Yeah, it is a solution to be able to turn your properties into co-living. Just be very wary of it's a very, very detailed approval process, and if you get it wrong, you could end up in jail. Like, it's as serious as that. When you're catering for the community and putting co-living properties together to fix a housing solution, if you don't get the right approvals, if you don't get the right insurances, you could end up in jail. And their fines are huge, up to $220,000. And in Victoria, as an example, there's 8.5 years jail time if you get it wrong. So for me, I look at, why is it Australia that always ends up as an unaffordable home and housing country? You know, every year they release the top 20 most unaffordable cities living home, so they compare wages versus the cost of living in a home. Australia has 14 of the top 20 every year. That starts with Hong Kong being number 1, Sydney number 2, Auckland number 3, Melbourne number 4 generally. 3 years ago, Hobart was the second most unaffordable city in the world, and to be controversial, it's because everyone put their place on Airbnb. So you took long-term rentals off the marketplace. I was talking to you. But Hobart was an example, right? Because there was 80,000 homes that got taken off the long-term rental market. There was nothing available to rent, and the people in Hobart don't earn as much as what they do on the mainland, yet the housing cost was higher. So that's now stabilised and levelled out because of what you said, that trend that came off Airbnb. But, you know, it's not just the housing availability, because we've got low vacancy rates, we've got more people coming into the country, and then we've got tradie shortages, you know.
I want to talk about that, Robbie. So yourself and friends, you're in obviously building. What's going on with trades? Like, I'm seeing houses nowadays that used to be 6 to 9 months builds. They're sort of blowing out past 12 months. Yes, we want to solve the crisis, and it's on a front, but the crisis is really, as you're saying there, Martin, it's actually quite a good crisis in some aspects, depending on whether you're a renter or not. But on your side, what's happening out on site? Like, how are you retaining your trades, or are they all moved into different industries? What's happening there?
We definitely use single trades. We've got a good team of trades, so we don't try to get new trades in all the time. You sell a lot of property. Are you selling property to people that are going to rent it out, or like is there a build shortage? Like, how are we not keeping up with the population coming in?
Look, I think what really Martin touched on earlier, but people got a bit scared. Lending's got a bit tougher. But if you can manufacture a way to create income, which the bank wants to see, then servicing does that. What I don't think's had to happen is the traditional way of thinking, which is I'll go and get a loan from ABC Bank, is not applying. What we really need now is we need innovators and we need investors that really want to create, I guess, solutions, is to really put their thinking caps on and go, okay, I'll go to this lender that takes into this income and it's not going to affect my equity. So I believe that there is definitely a solution, but I think what's happening is that the builders are also scared. I don't think they're taking on a lot of new jobs. Obviously, with some other recent collapses that have happened out there, builders they're not taking on jobs that are 12 months out. So what used to happen when I worked for some of the bigger builders is we'd take jobs out there that are 12 to 15 to 18 months and we'd have them in what's called an order bank. Nowadays, unless the land's titled or within 90 days, people don't really want to know about it. And the issues that happen with that is it's a short-term fix. It's just getting to the next quarter, the next quarter, the next quarter. Yeah.
The biggest problem I see right now is there's so many things heading towards the one place, right? So we've got tradie shortages across the country, and there's not a huge amount of money being spent on getting more out. You then have the National Construction Code combining essentially with the LHA, the Livable Housing Guidelines, and those guidelines are going to mean that the cost of building is going to go up even further. So because now you have to have wider hallways, you're going to have sort of disability bathrooms and all these bits and pieces put into the housing. We now got places where we're 700,000 houses short by the end of 2030 in Australia, just on current. And if you look around the world, who handled COVID the best? Well, us and New Zealand. So you want to become, as an immigrant, would you like to come to Australia or Hobbit Town? Like your choices are pretty limited, right? So everyone's coming to Australia. Yeah. So the Builders Grant worked brilliantly. It was the only thing I probably said that wouldn't work, and it did, right? What they would have done much better is said to every landlord in Australia, if you're a landlord right now, and look, there's about 1 million properties in property investors that own 2 or more properties, mum and dad investors, right? So if you just said to those, you said to half of them, 1 million of them, let's just take one of your houses, so 500,000, and let's turn them into co-living and convert them. We do those in 4 weeks, right? So we would take 500,000, we would put 2.5 million new front doors on the marketplace within the next 9 months. And if you just gave someone $25,000, I'd do it. Even better, we're not going to give you $25,000. We're not charging you land tax for the next 5 years because you converted your property. You watch the Australian investors jump on that, because no one in Australia likes paying tax. I love it, but others don't.
This has been such an important topic, and we'll be following up again on this next week. Guys, thank you so much for being on this particular panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us. If you want to see the full interviews, check out our website, thenewpropertyshow.tv. And we'll see you again next week. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us. If you want to see the full interviews, check out our website, thenewpropertyshow.tv. And we'll see you again next week.